로샨디기 기레스 디튼셔나 자자 조베상기 토브자발라 소놈다 이시기 위베 소 탐지 소고싱세도 소놈다 이시기 소 소놈기 소시디 장주기 셈단다 퍼진 두고나니 짐바 술팀 조바숨디체 존디기 퍼진데 니가지 띵인진다 셰랍니 이시기 소제 다데 디시 중고래 위베 소소고싱 디소베 탑 게싱인라 라레비치당 뉴몬바당 시지 리베 디바 탐제 퐁고라스 데퐁웨 탑 게싱인라 라레비치르스 페나 게싱인 람 유메발란 루디기 람켄타부 람나팅이 다 맵 존리 차고래 맵 존리 차고스 람나팅이 지페 살란 루디기 헬마타부 추첨볼레 갈디기 냠바토부 추 강행이 페파 쪽보 자올타부 냠바토부 텔라 베당 텐시네 람 유멜란 로베세 람케메나 람 노르토 콜토 캬르토 요토스 람켄단 로나 람 노르토 당 콜토 캬르토 메테 콤바 추마즈퍼 디서 침버 규로 디진도 라나메 베찬주 람라 조베 상기 기사르 로와라 람켄당 데베 테바 침베 게베싱인 메나 람 노르토데타 무테 벨람도 노르토바 무디 길람나 노르야 뇽티 길람라 콜토 라기 길람라 캬르토 람켄단다베 게싱인단 로나 람 노르토 콜토 캬르토 메바 탐제김베 종키르도 침버긴 규르도 대양 어다 규르도스 대양 fal중기 남탈레 이게 신인의 바로도 집에 남도 집에 남겐타부 제송소 세투송도.
And so now we continue on here in the text. So we've already spoken about the scriptural supports, and then the logically, why it is necessary to attend a spiritual master. And then thirdly, we go to similes. And actually, it's very self-explanatory here, these different examples, analogies here. So we'll just read forward in the text. A spiritual master is like a guide when traveling to an unknown place, like an escort when going to a dangerous place, and like a boatman when crossing a big river. Explaining the first simile. When traveling to an unknown place without a guide, there is the danger of mistaking the path, or of losing the path, or of straying from the path. But when a good guide is followed, then there will be no danger of mistaking the path, no danger of losing the path, and no danger of straying from the path. We will reach our destination without wasting any steps. And similarly, when entering the path of unsurpassable enlightenment and going the way of Buddhahood without a Mahayana spiritual master as a guide, then there is danger of getting lost on the non-Buddhist path, or mistaking the path for that of the hearer, or of straying into the path of the solitary realizer. On the other hand, if the guidance of the spiritual master is followed, then without mistaking the path, without losing it or straying from it, we can arrive in the city of omniscience. And so here, just going back and looking at the accumulations that had been just previously mentioned about the means in order to achieve complete Buddhahood, all the accumulations, including merit, primordial wisdom, must be gathered, and the means to do that is to depend on the spiritual master. For all the obscurations, including the afflictive emotions and subtle obscurations to enlightenment, must be purified. And the way to do this depend on the spiritual master. And so, just reiterating what we talked about a little bit before, is that we have the accumulations of merit and the accumulation of wisdom. And again, we gather virtue or merit through the we gather the accumulations from the six perfections, and we gather merit through our practices of generosity, practice of ethical discipline, and practice of patience. While embracing bodhicitta, then we will be gathering the accumulation of merit. When we practice meditation or meditative concentration or wisdom, again with bodhicitta, then we gather the accumulation of wisdom.
야다 베니바시나스 다 님포치니 양양도 숭도와 집에 서저는 중군남 젠산로 소베 세와다 제바이노스 다 오늘로 라와당 소베 람유메 신나텐데 두 번이나 젠세 여선도나 그 람유에지 티베이나 그 젠세 메사 젠센 거디 그 저거 따비 저거 야데요나 근데 왜 기가 말와 근데 그 학공인지 티용도 갈라 람샤르샤다 수조의 겸해지 연구로와 아니 거다 대나진지 오늘 왜 신인되게 오늘 밖에 수수가 냠는 제네 티지용도 갈라 아니 배 따다지 고 람노리아한테 용말에서 어떻게 쓰 거래 델란도에서 결마면나 루이섬 소감 론절라 니조 다 론절라 루이소 론절라 경계비 닝가요와 중도 열라스 헬마 젬보탄로나 니조 메퍼다 니킨 균이 메바라 아니베 메퍼 침버규티 디진디 장주기 셈 람드주네 소남다 이시기조 소징 탐지김베 쫑결돈 로와라 헬마 탄다웨 게신인 맨나 총군단라웨 난기 남도 따르완 난기 남도 남동님바 다 베나 가르쳐래 맞아 남동 다 잠다 샤레여와 어때 남도도 샤르두가라 삼론 디당 거라 디 남도 지금 또반 딘디질랍데 결람 딘디질 레버랬더니 또디 오금 거라스데 전주 디 제조 그외싱이 따다 랍그와 어떻게 거래 남도 감 뉴몬당 치두당 론덴라 소페 에 게웨 노르토 또 요테 젠드 소 저도 요도 대양 뉴모비 충군 니 오늘다 뉴몽 생일에 뱀 미시바 충군상 다 두두두두레 소소 배 뉴몽바 상기 군딜렌로에나 뉴몽데 파잔로에민도 다 타부이지는 라젠다 치론다이나 고트윈도 사여로와 인도가는 거니 충군을 두그래 충군이 상가서 파 충군을 여사 만으로 타가로와 지지바 제어 마라 든데 소주바 요도 텔타리양 뉴몽비 충군디니 라 녜규르나 게토칭 든데 소짱 저버교스 제송웨 헬마탄다베 게 싱인다 만달나 게웨 노르 미처 든데 소 미체바 탐제 김베 쫑케르도 침버규르도 디앙 팔중기 남달레 전주스베 소남니 게웨 싱인기 숭와오 세도 제송바당 어따 전주스베 소남 탐제 게웨 싱인기 숭와오 세 어따 전주스바이나 게웨 싱인라 때네 아니 또동 Dice che na tanga zo ta inde intelligent. Be dire. Tanga zo yula tsumi jingi namdo ngamba pe mo shegro. Wata tekiti namdo sidwala tsumi jingi namdo tekitire.
Tsunmi. Oh.
Tsujima inbi jingi namdo yorwa.
Mm-hmm. And now continuing on in our text, where actually it really just continues here quite beautifully. It just continues on speaking more about this, where it's really said so nicely and so beautifully. And here from Sri Sambhava's life story, there's a quote that says, "The spiritual master is like a guide who leads one on the path of perfection." And now here we have the example, or the second simile, the second example, where the example is going to talk about a dangerous place, or a place that where there would be, quite some harm that one could encounter. Let's say, one is like in a jungle that has really, carnivorous, really fierce animals. Without a guide, there's really some great, great danger there. For, if the guide were to have some abilities to work through that jungle, for example, knowing that when ferocious animals are full, then, they're not going to be on the hunt. They're not going to be looking to eat us and so forth, and holding other kind of knowledges and understanding of the they can see us through. Because actually we can go wherever we can make it if we have the guidance of a spiritual master. Without a spiritual master, so, things can be disastrous, and we could, things could go astray. If we think about what could happen to us in such a really dangerous place, and so now we continue on here with that example. The second simile is of a dangerous place which holds the threat of harm from robbers, thieves, wild beasts, and so forth. When going to such places without an escort, there is danger to one's body, life, and wealth. With a proper escort, one can reach the destination without any danger, and likewise by entering the path of enlightenment and aspiring to the city of omniscience, by gathering the great accumulations of merit and primordial wisdom. Without a spiritual master as an escort, there's a danger of losing life of favorable conditions and of losing the wealth of virtue to thieves and robbers. And this means the inner discursive thoughts and afflictive emotions and outer maras, evil spirits, and so forth. And so it said, when the crowd of robber-like emotions gets a chance, it will rob you of all your virtues and even take your life in favorable conditions. So we think about this here for a moment. Think about this dangerous place. We could lose our very body. We could lose, our possessions, whatever we're carrying. But, and this is the example of a jungle. But if we're out there in the jungle of the path, the spiritual path, without a spiritual master as an escort, what could we lose? We could lose the favorable conditions, like the wealth of our virtue, to thieves and robbers. And then the inner discursive thoughts. We think about these inner discursive thinking. What comes up in our mind constantly are these negative thoughts, these negative emotions. And because they're constantly arising, when we do attend a spiritual master, when we have a guide, then we'll know what to think. We'll know what to do with them, for we'll follow our master's advice. But without that master, again, these afflictive emotions can rob us of any virtue, for the afflictive emotions really take over. They really would prevent us from attaining this state of Buddhahood. And so these inner discursive thoughts are like likened to an enemy, for we could be actually in, the presence of the, sublime Buddha statue and still robbed by our afflictive emotions, our constant discursive negative emotions. So these are actually like our maras and, our enemies, it is said. And then further on, it says in the text, but if you are not separated from the spiritual master who's like an escort, you will approach the city of omniscience without losing your wealth of virtue or having your life of favorable conditions taken away. Thus, it is said in Sri Sambhava's life story, all the merits of bodhisattvas will be protected by the spiritual master. And so if even the bodhisattvas seek their protection and preserve their practice through attending a spiritual master, then no reason to even mention that we ourselves would need to attend the spiritual master.
신년 근년 마이 요에 남달래경 그외 신년 남니 다자 탐지 김벨람도 진벨 혈맛다보 순도와 다든지 내가 앞에 신년 가란조 레당보다 인디 답에 깨짐부 차대요래 다 신년 생데 오늘 깨짐부 차르다 아마 다 자갈이나 리기 개발 전부여와 아니 tamzeri 인내겐지기 아니 또 소리 신인들이 넘바지 된다 다 남바 리기 개발이미서 리미서 순로와
디세 보충마서
남바기 남발라다 힌두이나 리리 시부지기로와 리
레레 카스트 낭신
힌두로 카스 카스 시스템데 힌두나라 여러와 좀 된데다 티 매아서 저샤와
레레
매아서디 갈라다 날렌테나라베 리다 리지가 말해
알라소
아니 예겐 케바지 답에 링엠바 돈을 링엠바레디어래 다 간제 운에 케바요래 아니 공
가리기 케바레
낭베치 케바 아니 케바이 되갈라 다 리장베 부지 랍투중이 되기 예겐래 예겐 때 말해 링엠바데 예겐래 때니베 예겐니베 베제티 온디갈라니 코파 곰잡 투스체네 주구 답에 코 곰야부중네 다 오늘 가르쳐 루신장나 샘신장 때문에 남간이 비례중으래 비례중디갈라 애니코
우렉냥 캠데
리 토비 부데 다 예겐데기 이루데 남간이 비례래 필요한데 이루라 남깔 필요돼 또 제배 필요한데라 아니 그 또서 얘긴데 니 링암바이 마하거래 nga ri zampo inda pirthubire geng ngende ri ngamba inda pirmatu resede semna namto ngambate charsone
namka la ani pirken di regnampa
girudre
gedrubre oh laso
girude da yegende ri ngamba inza o yende ri ngamba inza pirmatu re nga ri zanga inza pirtu inzare samde ko yegen katin dije eni tenijin 남도 된지 깨버래.
레레.
남도도 깨다 그 또방인데 사사 소리. 된지 자상 예전에 기루 겨도 땀치 생인데 빼 미시버 깨침 보래. 땡겨 말 땡차차래 야버죠.
아니 남카 네 아니 롱파데 아니 칸데 아니 김슨 아니 카레라테네.
예겐라 또 세메 중으로 와.
레레레.
예겐리 마보 인자. 나리 더 인자.
남토 디샤네.
남토 티기 왕게.
디왕게.
또바 냠소래.
라소.
그이글 또바 야보데 옌렌테니 깨버어 와. 옌렌테니 기사면도 갈라. 고 또바 냠도 와래.
And so, ani pokela ani kabar lepsong ngeshila kabane.
다 배순병 고대 다 단다디
Pes
에 개념
pesumpa ani
마미오에
sarmasong.
남탈레즈도
Mhm.
어디 교회 신인 남 라자 탐제 김비 니수 침벌 혈비 혈마도 보 예수소스 디니 배순바시바니 인생도
Mhm. Pe nipa sarsong.
베니바살다
Sasong ani tene pesumpa.
다 순바시기로
Okay. And so again, so we've just finished out this second example of the dangerous place, and we look again at the the spiritual master, who is like an escort to bring us to omniscience, and that's what it says here at the end of this simile. Each spiritual master is like an expert who takes you to the state of omniscience. And at the time of the Buddha, long ago in India, actually I think currently still in India, there was at the time of the Buddha the caste system, where some were considered higher, some were considered lower, and those of lower caste were looked down upon. And so there was the Brahman caste that was said to be the exemplary caste, for example. But actually, at the time of the Buddha and in Nalanda, actually this had been eradicated. There was no caste system. Yet it seemed in the minds of some were still holding to this caste system, because actually there were some really great teachers at that time, really great expert teachers who, while, for example, and so remember that, the Buddha had really, and at Nalanda, this was really eliminated. There were no different levels according to caste at the time. They really were wiping that out in the context of this great monastic college. However, there was this really teacher of a higher caste who actually was able to, he had such learning and experience that he had gained the level of pliancy to both body and mind that he was able to levitate up into the air, into the sky. And while he was levitating, so there was also another member of that monastic college who had been indoctrinated in as a member of the college, but was a member of the lower class, of what had been considered in society the lower caste. And so now this great Buddhist expert scholar who was in the sky levitating looked down upon the assembly and said, I am of the great caste, and therefore I can levitate. He had this thought arose in his mind, therefore I can levitate. But him, that boy who'd been taken from that poor lower caste family would not be able to do what I can do here. And with that thought, he plunged to the ground. And so it was simply from under, the power of that thought that he lost the ability that had been, that level of ability of realization, and he was plunged right back down, fell to the ground. And so, really this is, Geshe-la was explaining that it's, the amount of our practice that, really can, get us places, but look where our thoughts can also get us.
야, 다 페스ум바다 디 슈갈디갈라다 야 슈라니 빼 오니 냠뇽연데게 답 자전된 라빈지디갈라다 오니 잘리요게 고 냠뇽연데게지나 다 슈녀가요 말아 오다 딜 빼잖아 순고래 다간지 대순고래 베숨바니 추 첨보를 갈베지 님밤 메페 두암 지수주 경 백가라 미친 뭐 중이도 용암 중이기 결월 줄라 님바였나 디엠베스기 팔까기 침벌기로 스타 오늘 소소 냠뇽이나 주간이나 배 주제이나 갈두고 와 어떻게 쓴 거래 대나 진지 답에 개회 신인데야 소소 배 냠뇽 여인데 어떤데 지고 오르마도 간주만 좀 아이 지인이 인생인지 팬다고 말해서 숨으래 대신도 그로이 야솔레 갈베체 냠바단 라웨 개회 신인 맨나 담비 취기 두징 주니 친양 코로와니도 인치를 코로의 윤기 캐로 대양 야완 짐바 메파니 뒤 바르도 지민교 연된 탐제 랍조경 라나 메나 시터민스 제송 때나 냠바단라웨 개신인 템버잖아요 코로의 겨서 8월 냥을레 데베 감사를 침벌교데스 다디 냥은 렌데 세네 냥한데 뇨몽을 제거다 뇨몽데 냥은지네 뇨다 뇨몽은 대송나 다 니거래 데네 디기 고츠고래 오다테리 감사를 침벌교데스 답에 뇨몽 왜 그러이 가져야네 감사 랩사데스 대양 돈보고 벤돌레 개회 신인의 그로이 주침벌레 돌웨 람타부 제송 대회나 람케남 헬맘 냠발타부 개회 신인 템버차오 개회 신인기 오다 템버차오스 대원다 신인 야와드 시행고도아 맞아.
And so now we look at the third simile here. And the third simile, first of all, we set the scene with dangerous waters, dangerous and difficult waters. And if we were to need to cross a really, choppy and difficult ocean, a body of water, then we would want an expert, someone who is really expert at navigating those waters to make sure that we made it safely. And so this is what the third simile is referring to, where in the text it says, when crossing a big river aboard a boat without a boatman, you will not cross to the other side, because the boat will either sink under the water or be taken up by the river current. With a boatman, you will cross to the other shore by his efforts. And so again, if we were wanting to cross difficult waters, we'd want to have somebody that was experienced navigating that boat across those waters. And so whatever it is that we're looking to accomplish, we can accomplish that only if we rely on the great master with experience, the type of experience like the captain that knows how to navigate difficult waters. And here it continues on to say, likewise, when crossing the ocean of samsara without a spiritual master to act as a boatman, then even if you enter into the boat of holy dharma, you will be carried by the current of samsara, or you will drown in samsara. And it is said, the boat will not take you to the other shore of the river without a boatman. Even if you have the complete qualities, you will not be freed from samsara if you are without a lama. So, for example, if we were to attend or have a spiritual master who was just giving out here and there some, advice that wasn't well suited for the waters we were navigating, that just wasn't really matching up the advice to what was really needed, just giving, directions that wouldn't kind of get us where we wanted to go, then this wouldn't be of help. because we want to navigate this Dharma path in the appropriate way. So, because what is the water that we're looking to transcend? And as it says here in the next part of our text, it says, therefore, if you attend a spiritual master who is like a boatman, you will reach the dry bank of nirvana, the other side of the ocean of samsara, where it says in the Planting the Noble Stock Sutra, a spiritual master is like a boatman who crosses the ocean of samsara. So we're looking to cross the ocean of samsara, and we're looking to transcend to the other side, to nirvana. And what are we transcending? What is nirvana transcendent of? Nirvana is transcendent of suffering. And so that is the shore that we're trying to reach, the shore of nirvana that has transcended the suffering waters of samsara. And so that finishes out the similes. And so we had these three categories that we were looking at before: scripture, logic, and simile, and those have been finished. And we go back to our 5 that had been listed at the beginning of our chapter, where it said we were looking at reason. And that was number 1. Number 2, our classifications of spiritual masters. So we finished the reasons why we should attend and rely on our teachers. And secondly, now we look at the different classifications of teachers.
다들 이제마다 있잖아. 스케줄다 karma 준두 두가 당긴 베스.
So now we'll stop here and we'll save like this next category of looking at the different classifications of spiritual masters, and we have about 10 minutes for questions.
Can you explain the outer maras? What are the outer?
Ani ngato nangidra dang chi gidra ani de nangshin re mara nangshin duji nangshin re ani nangidra dang chi gidra ani gi pena nangidra sena nyomong re ani chi gidra out the outer, right? The ani di chi gidra di chi gi de ani de denso gi korla drashe
신라다 타야 시랍니다. 세들라 다체는 세밀리 년차로도. 난근다데 빼때가 코지 유 가르소래. 균놈 따마투이나? 따빼때가 미지 세럽는 세럽을 로 내긴지를 되어와. 에 풍월증이지로 다르두나?
naso dene chi gidra gi korla ani dordu chena.
신라데다 에 가자 장은지간이 코 트로프 차로 그래. 칼라지기 짐로지간이 코 트로프 차로 그러. 대시시라시라기 걸지고 시라요 말이 신달라. किसी सुसुके के मैंने सुसु 20 गिरे दिलेला तो
Laso ani pelcher dire geshila
खासो दे
dinang la yang ani du rang injikela ani songido du pena du jigi du
두지 뇽모베디 치다기디 붐베디 레피디 저디아레
o yang keche kale
뇽모베디 치다기디 붐베디 레피디
lagibu
레푸
lebu. And so, first of all, we should understand that, really there's no end to what can be the outer enemies, the outer maras. And that can be the case for the inner maras as well, because or the inner enemies, for we've identified the inner mara, the inner enemy, as our own afflicted mental state. But the thing is, if we don't find fault with being afflicted, with negative mental state, if we never recognize it, then they will be with us, accompanying us from life after life after life. They will be there and they will be inside. So the way to put an end is to recognize and find fault with them. But I asked Geshe-la, could he explain a little bit more about some of the outer maras, because I think in our text it actually says in English maras. But first of all, Geshe-la said, when we talk about what does it mean, an external enemy or an external mara, an external enemy? Well, if somebody is nice and they speak good words to us, they say the things we want to hear, they give us nice food and make us happy like that, then all is good. But the minute we don't like what's being said or what we're being fed, for example, then they turn into an enemy. And so that is what it is meant by, outer enemies. But in specifically when we talk about maras, there's the classical fourfold breakdown of maras, the maras of afflictive emotions, the mara of the Lord of Death, the mara of aggregates, and the mara of the son of the gods. There's this classical fourfold classification of the four maras as well. Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about sorry, I was kind of distracted. Were you talking earlier? Were you talking about like a spiritual teacher that tells you something you don't want to hear, or were you talking about somebody that actually could be themselves exercising their emotions?
Let me go back into our text and just find exactly where it is too. Okay, I see where it is. The inner discursive thoughts, afflictive emotions, and the outer maras. So are you talking about the inner afflictive emotions?
Like the outer. So is a person that is like so can an outer mara be manifested in a human being? I guess like what is an outer mara? That's what I understand. I mean, like using a metaphor, or were you like
Di chi ani dila pena indicela chidu ani songido trido dila ani chigidu di pena ani mishandak chigidu ani tsina
다 친, 자들라 뒤지 민다가 인게.
re olas
자들라. 당원은 자들 당마저는 뒤지나다 너베킹이 들어와.
laso
민다다 말아 샤르마다 인게 너베킹이 들라 아주 뒤려고 그러다.
laso okay ani kongi trewa de dangdraware
어때?
ani chigidu ani mishandak ani chigidu chidu ani chana ani
다-
sigirabe
다
mishandak
에,
me pena human being me
아, 가르쳐오래. 또 파저디 수수 묘몽 공패도 당한다. 묘몽라는 배 묘몽 난댕이잖아. 뉘고마 잡으러 왔다. 들레다 뒤체지다 요말에. 지 뒤잡으래 돼.
laso pelcher di triwa ani dine ani lapadra kangyen sena ani mara injikila du sena namgyun di ani
Du
simple nangshin re di mi mare
타고 신분해진다 구기어 말어 왔다. 뒤 시디가라.
las
수소 네백경인데라.
laso
가정 요모 게르치베이나 지 미 땡지는 요모 게르치베이나 다 뒤잡으러 와. 뒤전한 라세나 다테리 인구. 다 신부도 드네 다 구기어 말해. 리피토보. 군다는 뭐 쓰노래. 리토 인제 라진 민주인.
yang slowly
리토 인제 라진 민중신. 리피토보 있나? 라고 여바지 구 말해스 카츠와 연대근지다 라고 여바지 구 말해스
rago sena
라고
rahos
싱 혼.
oh raho oh
라진 민중시 라고 연대게 라요 연대게
oh
구
laso
말해스
oh laso oh
제진 펜베 졸긴 줌데니 레라저베 디베 트로제베 고에네 진리지 폰장 라레 괜히 당아서 참바게나 미가가 카깝 시부진 용구도 ene lapa matang dekido wa
Re.
ota tena jin lipi tropu tena jin chini pe pangu re labre
So here, this word that we have, I'm not sure what page it's on for in the text, but in this line where it says outer maras, so let me just bring it to the beginning of the sentence. It's a long, really long sentence. But anyways, it speaks about the outer maras. And then it talked about the inner discursive thoughts and the outer maras. And Geshe-la says here, we can really interchange this word mara with enemy, because we're not talking about some kind of a monster or a spirit here. What is meant is anything that causes harm can be considered an enemy. And what in particular is the harm we're looking at? Anything that causes our emotions to get worked up, a negative response. That which causes us to move into negativity, this can be considered mara. So therefore, if you're with someone who, triggers you, and then we have negativity coming up, or negative action, negative thought, then this should be considered a mara for us. This should be considered an enemy. And this can have the body of a person. It can have the form of a person. So we should understand that what we mean is bad friends, someone who's a negative influence, someone who triggers us. And then there is a quote that says that this, friend in negativity, a friend in negativity, this negative friend or this evil friend is not one that needs to have monstrous horns, have horns and that kind of a scary appearance. So I didn't get all of that quote. Ani geshe-la di sikche sama ani gyor.
이 디조 이제 라진 민중신
Okay, these are some.
시신 펜베 솔긴 좀되네
Sishing,
펜베
Pempe.
딱 디바 저게라 빼 가전 점보시에 카드 그 고무셔그 빼 딘디지네니 수수 디바 사주고야나 디다 수수라 디베 tropores 딩웨네 나지 방구레스.
So they don't have to have this horned monstrous appearance to be a negative friend. Even if they have a pleasant appearance and speak really great words and really try, to speak, really, sweetly, beneficially. However, if while doing that, they're gathering negativity and kind of pulling you into negativity, this is what's called a negative friend. And we should try to avoid them, kind of like we avoid the plague for example, when somebody sneezes, right? They have something infectious and they sneeze into their hands, right? We want to stay away from them. We don't want to touch anything they're going to touch. Same way, because we can really get infected by their negativity. So anyways, this is what it means by an outer mara.
So then they're under the influence of negative afflictions as well. I mean, that's really...
Dune dikdrok di konso yang ani moranki ani di ani lapsong dikdrok bedrok de yang ani nyomonki wongi ani kanchu mangchu ani dikpa
무문벌로 뒤르거든. 뒤나 뒤에는 tropu 뒤 뇽 펠드 정인데 다 뒤지 민다 쪽으로 와.
So yes, they are under the power, or the sway, or the affliction of the mara of afflictive emotions, which is one of the four that we mentioned.
민다 발라게 겁니다.
And
민다 쪽으로 왔어.
and so then then it would be okay to call them a negative friend. So this is how we can label them that. Negative friend. This is what makes them kind of live up to that label.
Yeah.
Aren't they only a negative friend because our spiritual level is too immature? So, like if you contrast this idea of a negative friend to the Lojong teachings of, all of your enemies are your spiritual teachers,
Mm-hmm.
that's a higher teaching, right? And so, it isn't the only way somebody can be a negative friend is if we're immature in our view, and our ego is too strong to be able to see them as a teacher, showing us our ego.
Ani pecha ani kashela ani ngato di diktrok di dra denso ngato gewe shenyen nangshin dushe shagore ani songido chetsang ani ngato gi how to say nyamlen gi
그래. 고 냠랭이 세 털려도 되는 섬땅이로 와서. 다 당부 냠랭이 뺀 잘라 에 개신일 따부 그렇지 두고 말와. 디 모두도 갈라 수수 거기 장주기 셈다 텐데 파인 양양도 섬로다네. 아니 셈네 배 수소 왕여바지 차용도 갈라. 아니 제니 다싱인데 메나 조바곰식 말해. 조바곰말라 엔트라고 그래. 다디스 조바곰에네 배 신인 타부레서 섬다네도 그 또빈 류네세 톨로기 개발차바라와.
So it is a little bit about the level of our practice, like the level of our, strength of practice, where we're at with our abilities. Because at first, what we need to do, we might not be prepared to have such a perception, or we couldn't really perceive them as a teacher, someone who's helping us. So what we first have to do is we need to study the benefits of bodhicitta, the benefits of altruistic attitude. And after that, then we gain this strength to actually see them as as a teacher, because they actually are providing us with the opportunity to practice patience, for example. And so therefore, when we get to that level of ability in our practice, something like this comes up, then we see them like our teacher of patience.
낭비 저게 냠랭균이 맨데겐지 랑친지 슈 촌보지라 연데겐지 미지라 나데 소소 얘기나지 레즈나 나원로야까지 말와 나원로 그래.
And really, so when it comes to cutting down our self-clinging, to working on this like egocentric attitude, having this kind of tolerance for someone who, instead of getting triggered, is something, a practice that's not just for Buddhists. This is, something that, all people need to do when we're working with our ego clinging and our self-cherishing, to be able to see them as someone who's helping us, cut this all down.
다 즈베 파인통 즈베 콩리님이 통 즈베 파인통 근데 통통에 간사지라 다 즈바싱디 배 콩루스긴 꾼데는 디어레 디에니 즈바 없나 파인딘 디어레 센디자마데 겨치마에 루인제보단타니 양타바지 텐디지 끼그레 즈바싱디 달라테네 즈바 용거르즈 랍디가라 티니 텐데기 하콘데겐질라 랍디가라 주르부시부시고 콜셈라 따다 콜셈라 랭거레 낭베체데 뻬테가 따두스젠 로거다 바기 또베네제 단테니 딱 주신 로거마도 요새데 셰유즈 셰샤나 바조들 펜미펜 타고르마도 바조 마페나 주사 전부이네 게 펜마소
아니 파촉사나?
와 주셔서들 펜고로와.
And so we are working on cutting down this self-cherishing in just the same way. And for example, if we look, so we were talking in that particular case about patience. So what we have to do is we look at the benefits of observing that patience. What are the qualities and benefits that come from my really being able to forbear this, to really have patience with it? So first, one looks at the qualities and the benefits of that. Secondly, now look at the anger. Like if one were not to be patient with it and get triggered, one would see the faults in the flip side of that, the anger, the the misgivings and faults of that. And so then one would think, if I'm patient, here's what happens. And not only in this life will I get benefit, but in the next life, it'll continue to grow, develop, benefit, and really become authentic practice of patience. Anyone who can begin to transform their thinking like this and stop in a situation, weigh it, and see it and understand it, and they will be able to direct their action just like they're able to direct their thoughts and understanding of it. Because otherwise, any kind of reaction, doing anything other, is not going to help the other person. So this is a quality that actually, if we don't employ it, the Dharma path doesn't help.
Yeah, I get the karma chuchindo.
Okay, so it looks like we're ready.
Tomorrow job,
I think we'll leave it here.
Yeah. Kari rawe kurwe jinkamde pendang dewa malunjung jere ziwan tenzin gyatso yi jape side parto tengyuruchi injampal pawe chitra kem kundo zambo ten te jindu te da kungi jizo dalo gwan de da tamche rabto ngon tisum chepe kyawa tam ngō kānglā chūtō ngā pātāng dāshēng kēwē tsāwān dē zāmbō chē chē rāb tō ngō wā rā kī.
Remain until samsara ends, just as the Bodhisattva Manjushri attained omniscience and Samantabhadra too. So now I dedicate these merits to train and follow in their footsteps. As all the victorious Buddhas of the past, present, and future praise dedication as supreme, so now I too dedicate these sources of my merit for all the good actions.
Thank you. Saturday Momo.